Hello, everybody. Hi, hi, hi. I feel like what's going on? That's supposed to be over here. Oh my gosh. Okay, let's see. All right, you guys. So, welcome back to another video. It's been a little bit of time since I've been on YouTube live, and my life has been busy outside of YouTube. And so I just haven't had a lot of time to get on. But I was feeling inspired this morning, and I was like, I'm gonna talk to these girls about the spiritual, emotional, physical level up, and just like what that actually requires and how to do it. So what I want to do is just go through the three levels: emotional, physical, spiritual level up, and like kind of what I did and how you can do that as well. Let me just make sure this lighting is okay. I know there's like that bright light in the background. So I want to talk about the first thing that I did when I decided that I was just going to change my life. And I want to talk about my rock bottom moment. I'm going to tell you guys about my rock bottom moment. I've actually had several rock bottom moments, you guys, several. But the one that really sort of spiraled me into this new life was about, I want to say like 10 years ago. How old am I? 34. No, it was like I was like 28. So 8 years ago. So 8 years ago, I had the privilege of having my rock bottom moment. One of the first of many. And I was sitting in my apartment. I had just gotten out of a relationship with a malignant malignant narcissist. I was sitting in my apartment. I had just gotten out of a horrible, terrible, terrible relationship. It was, looking back, it was abusive, emotionally. And I had this vision of who I would be if my life had continued on that path. And it was very scary for me to think about the person that I would be. So I was highly controlling, highly emotional in the way of, um, you know, I wasn't in control of my emotions and they were just like running rampant. I was highly emotional, meaning I was angry a lot, right? So I was highly emotional, I was highly reactive, lacked compassion, and I was really good at my job. Like I was great at my work, but I wasn't so great at interpersonal relationships. And so I had this vision of me at 40 years old, an alcoholic, not obviously unhappy, but really having no direction in life, not having any friends or like relationships or partners, being miserable. Um, and there were actually people in my life at that time who represented that for me. And that's why I say it was a privilege, because I think it's a privilege when you get a preview of your life by looking at somebody else. Because my dad used to say that, growing up, like, you make these choices, this is what your life is going to be like. When we were driving down the street and there would be people on the street corners, he would talk about like if you make certain decisions, this is what your life is going to be like. So it was like this projection. And so when I was sitting there, I saw myself unhappy, an alcoholic, blaming everybody else for all my problems, unable to control my emotions, still very childlike, but at like 45 or 50 years old. And I was like, something has to change. Something has to change. And that's when I was like, okay, I'm going to just take control of my own life in the way of my emotional, physical, spiritual health. So how do I interact with people? How do I become that's when my like self-help journey kind of started, where I was like, there's so much more to Christianity than just reading your Bible. Like, what does that mean to really have a heart that is pure and kind and humble? And you start thinking about the Proverbs 31 woman. And so anyway, that was what sparked that. So I started first with my emotional level up because I used to be super reactive and highly emotional and angry, and I was triggered by everything and everybody. And I didn't like that about myself. And so when you're like leveling up, you have to not like that part of you. Like you have to understand how that part of you is detrimental to relationships or detrimental to your own life. And so for me, I didn't like the way that people responded or the way that I felt when I was triggered all the time. Because deep down inside, if you're triggered all the time, you know that you are people control you, right? So I started looking into something came up on my YouTube channel about emotions and triggers and lashing out. And I started down this rabbit hole of emotional control and emotion management. And so that's where I started with my emotional level. So the first thing I did was I journaled and I started to write down. And every time I felt like a strong emotion, I was triggered, I would write it down. I would think about why I was feeling that way, what produced that in me, why was it such a big deal for me for this person to say that or for this thing to happen. And I still do this mentally to this day. But I had this, I was like, oh my gosh, I am so triggered by all of these people and I don't know how to stop it. So the more I practice acknowledging, identifying and receiving my own emotions and not excusing them but being like this is what's happening and I need to figure out why, the better I became at my emotional health. Um so now people say all kinds of wild stuff to me and I just smile. I just smile or I just shut my mouth. I don't have anything to say. Sometimes I clap back because you guys know, when you have five sisters, like that clap back game is strong. So I had to learn how to not clap back at everybody because that tongue is sharp, you guys. I'm telling you, when you have five sisters, the folks, they're evil. They are mean. And so you have to be quick witted and quick on your feet. And I was like that all the time. Wasn't cute. So I had to learn how to process my emotions in the moment. And I did that by journaling and letting myself get all my emotions out. And then when I would be triggered, I could kind of do it really quickly in my head. The other thing is just taking a deep breath. Like, this is not helpful right now, and walking away. So I learned that first emotionally. The physical level up didn't come as challenging to me because I was always an athlete. So I enjoyed working out. I enjoyed being physical. I enjoyed going to the gym. I enjoyed CrossFit. So the physical level up to me wasn't as challenging. But here's what's challenging for my clients: making it a habit. Now, earlier I talked about I didn't like the part of myself that was highly triggered. I didn't like the part of myself that was reactive and emotional. And so I sought to change that. And I sought to change that with deep and strong vigor. Right. So I went after that part of myself um aggressively, like with the sledgehammer. The same thing has to happen for your physical health. I competed for what, it was like 3 or 4 years, and my health was a wreck. And I had to actually learn how to be healthy again, not just lean. I went after that part of my health with the sledgehammer. So I literally was like, I'm not going to sit up here and be on a restrictive diet and work out like a maniac and never rest. So I became super obsessed with my massage time. I became super obsessed with my sleep. I became super obsessed with keeping my workouts to an hour, hour and a half. I became super obsessed with having a salad. Now I still went out. You guys, if you follow me for a long time, you guys know I went out quite a bit and I went out to dinner and all this other stuff. But I was very, very particular about how I spent my time for my physical health. So you're going to have to do so with a sledgehammer. The same way I went after my emotional health with a sledgehammer, I went after my physical health, because all of this stuff is so deep rooted that if you try and like, oh, I think I'm going to take a cute little chisel and I'm just going to like, when you need to make big changes, when an artist is starting off, they chop, they big aggressive chops, and then they go through and they do fine tuning. That's the same thing with your physical health. You're going to have to chop down, and your emotional health. You're going to have to take a sledgehammer and start chopping away at that stuff, all that old programming, all that old thought processes, and then come back and do all the fine tuning stuff. Okay. But start with something big. So that was my physical level up. I started by sledgehammering all of the behaviors that were causing me to be stressed out. All my blood markers were in the tank. My cholesterol was way too low. Yes, you can have too low cholesterol. My I my white blood cell count was down, my hemoglobin was down, like my red blood cell count was my doctor was like, we're gonna have to figure something out about like what's going on. Like, I'm gonna have to go send you to go get a bone marrow scrape if you don't figure that if you don't start taking care of yourself. Because she knew it wasn't a cancer issue. She was like, this is actually a lifestyle issue. So I went after my health with a sledgehammer, immediately cut off clients, immediately started going to the getting a massage every week. Yes, it was back when they were like $25. So you do have to go at your level up with the sledgehammer. Spiritually, this is a big one for a lot of people, and I've never met a person who develops their spiritual life and doesn't develop every other area of their life. I've never met a person who doesn't level up their physical life and level up every other area of their life. So spiritually, I'm a Christian. And I don't, you don't have to agree with me. I don't really care. So I'm talking to my Christians on my spiritual level up. The first thing I did was I started listening to the Bible every single day, every single morning, and I still do it to this day. I have the Bible in a Year programming that plan on my YouVersion. So I started to listen to the Bible in a Year every single day. And the reason is because so I grew up, I'm a pastor's kid. So I grew up with sermons all day, but a lot of people don't preach on every single chapter in the book, right? And what I learned by listening to the Bible every single morning, I started to hear things that I'd never heard in the Bible before. And so, and we all know that the Bible is alive and well and sharper than a two-edged sword. So it starts to pierce your heart in a different way when you're just purely listening to the word. Like you're just listening. You're not dissecting it. It's not a theology lesson. You're just listening to what it says, especially Proverbs, Psalms, Timothy, Ephesians, Jude, you know? So listening to the stories in the Old Testament and hearing the character of God and who he is was super helpful for my spiritual level up, because a lot of us have this vision of God as just this like complete judge, and that's it. Like it's just all hellfire and brimstone. And it is. And it's also like an actual God, a loving father who I can trust, who's protective, who's providing, who's giving me all of my needs. And so if you're someone who's kind of detached from that, where like, oh, I just go to church on Sunday and I listen to the sermons all week, but I don't actually, so I'm always dissecting the Bible, but not ever listening to the word for the word being the word. I'm never actually just letting God speak to me through his word. That is problematic. And I'm not against, obviously, like you should listen to sermons, but there's also a time and place to just, what does God actually say? Because like I said, like some pastors aren't preaching on Habakkuk. Some pastors are not teaching on Nehemiah, or Malachi, right? They're just not going there. And so when you hear the stories and you hear how God is faithful and how he's put people through things and brought them out on the other side, you kind of get a different view of who God is. That's the first thing, was listening to the Bible every single morning. On the Bible reading plan, I've learned so much about God and who he is. And it's so comforting when you're a believer to have those things in your heart, and draw on those. So that was number one. Number two was doing a prayer journal. And basically that just means writing out your prayers, because a lot of us, again, if your vision of the Lord is hellfire and brimstone, then you're only asking him for like penance and repentance. And that's it. And you're only asking him for forgiveness. And you're not really like, imagine having a relationship with your parents where the only thing you're asking them for, the only thing you're talking to them about is your sins. Imagine. Imagine going to your mom and like, oh, we're gonna have lunch, and I did this wrong and that wrong and this wrong and this wrong and this wrong and that wrong. Like, imagine. And of course, lead us not into temptation. Forgive us of our sins. That's part of the sinner, the not the sinner's prayer, Lord, that thing, but the oh my gosh, our Father in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come, thy will be done. You guys know what I'm talking about. The prayer. So that's part of it is to you should be forgiving of yourself. You should be asking for forgiveness. And you should also give us this day our daily bread. Lead us not into temptation. We're talking about everything with God. And if you're not doing that, then do you really have a relationship, like a deep relationship with God? Can you really go to him with everything? Because you guys know I started I've said this for a while. I live for an audience of one. And this was born out of my spiritual level up, was realizing that there are people who claim to be Christians and who were Christians, genuine God loving, God fearing, Bible believing Christians who still couldn't give me the right advice, who still couldn't give me what I need to hear because they are not God. Very wise, very not, but not God. And so when I say I live for an audience of one, it's because I made a conscious effort to be like, I want to be able to connect with the Lord and talk to God and know what does he want for my life, because I made some decisions on with God that changed my life that other people were like, "Now why do you need to do that? You don't need to do that." So, spiritual level up. Number one, listen to the Bible. The Bible is sharper than a two-edged sword. It is alive and well. Listen to it. Even if you, I love my grandmother used to say this, like, and it's true. Even we know how the subconscious works, right? So if you're listening to it, but you're doing something else, you're still going to absorb the words. You're still going to hear them and they're still going to go into your subconscious. So you can be listening. Sometimes when I'm driving, I zone out, but I'll know what the Bible, what the verse, the chapter was about because it was still in there. That's how your brain works, right? That's why we can memorize song lyrics so easily, right? So listen to the Bible every single day. And then number two, start a prayer journal where you are actually talking to God about everything. And if you're afraid that someone's going to read it, that's fine. Write the prayer, rip it up, burn it, throw it in the garbage can, flush it down the toilet. I don't know. I don't care what you do with it. That kind of thing. Okay. So that was my spiritual level up. I'm going to circle back to the front of the video, the beginning of the video, when I said the thing that really helped me change was not liking the parts of me that were not serving me and helping me to become a better person. So for my emotional health, that was being triggered all the time. For my physical health, that was just not feeling good. Like I just didn't, even though I was lean, I was the leanest I'd ever been. I was like 12% body fat. I didn't feel good. I was tired all the time. I needed 3 to 4 monsters, energy drinks to stay awake. My spiritual level up, I didn't feel like I actually had a connection with God. I had all this theology, but couldn't talk to God about my real issues. I didn't like that. And so I decided to change and I went at it with the sledgehammer. I went at it with the sledgehammer. And if you want to change, if you want to level up, you've got to go at it with the sledgehammer. And people are like, you can't change from a place of hate. That is true. But you can change from a place of dislike. And you have to change from a place of this is not making me become the person that I want to be. This is not serving me, to be highly emotional, highly triggered, unhealthy, disconnected from God. And so I'm going to go at it with the sledgehammer, and I don't care who likes me, and I don't care who approves of it, and I don't care what my mama, my daddy, my husband, I don't care, because this is about health. This is about emotion. This is about your spiritual health, right? People don't like when you change because they can't trigger you anymore. They can't hold things over your head. And they can't manipulate you spiritually. Because you can be like, no, that's not in the Bible. I'm like, that's not there. Because I read that thing 4 times now. It's not in there. Show me Bible chapter, verse, context, please. You see what I'm saying? So anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this live. If you are interested in coaching, life coaching, health coaching, Christian life coaching, fitness coaching, you can visit joannajoy.com. Just put it in the chat. And if you liked this video, don't forget to like it, share, comment, and subscribe. And I will see you guys in the next one. Make it a great day and go get that emotional, spiritual, physical level up. Bye.